Well, yeah, if I were president, oh, that's right, Mr. President, please, your lawyers that you're working with are geniuses because you've already out-trumped them before you came to office because you started, as I've said before, ranting and raving about your revenge and how you're going to get it before you even became president. So therefore, you went on record to state that we have been invaded, and therefore the Alien Enemies Act is absolutely apropos in this case because it covers invasions. We don't have to be at war. So these stupid leftards that think that they can beat you in court are stupid. I mean, they're morons. I have to think up new words for these people because they've now reached down into such subterranean demonic levels. And then I want to chastise the news, whether they, in all news, especially those who think that they're doing good news, for allowing idiots like Hollywood stars or stupid politicians to catch a headline. I don't care what they think. What they think is like asking a demon spawn what they think about good and evil.
What do you mean, catch a headline?
That these guys get on the headline, like all these Hollywood stars get on headlines because Cher says something, because Barbara Streisand, she got fat because of Trump.
Those people pay to be on Breitbart. When you see Cher on Breitbart, that's who you're talking about, I think, are you? All of them? When they're on Breitbart takes money from them, and then they get a placement on Breitbart.
And you see, what they don't understand is those libtards that the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 was, in fact, a battle between political parties. Is that not what is happening right now? Is that not exactly what's happening right now? And remember that the NDAA, and I just always want to thank these evil warlords like Obama, or Obamer as I call him, who in 2016 dropped 26,000 bombs on unsuspecting people without any authorization from Congress. So when they want to talk about war, they better just shut up. Because none of those presidents that previously in the White House had any action taken by Congress to go into war. They went into what's called, what is it called? It's called the Authorization for Military Force. Authorization for the use of military force. AUMF, I think. And that is not war. That's what they used to call in Vietnam police action. Well, Trump is far beyond police action because we're in 7 states of national emergencies right now, folks. So he can use anyone he wants. And invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 is good because it hits the 2 points. They can't talk about war. You've already declared war on the southern border and war on the northern border because of fentanyl, because it killed 300,000 Americans last year. We're at war. I know not many people want to talk about that, and they probably very sad to hear me go on ranting and raving about it, but I have been for years, and we have written long articles, intelligence reports, and reported this in all of our videos. What's going on at the southern border is an attack of every one of our enemies. The very people that USAID is giving money to. And now those people are going to these criminal justices. Now remember, people didn't know this, but they'll find it out when they do the investigation, that not only the attorney generals and the secretary of states in the last few years were controlled by George Soros direct donations and donations from Tides and Open Society, as well as many, many, many other NGOs, all hiding underneath the guise of fake names, fake monikers for justice and democracy. So these attorney generals were brought in there to do what? To overthrow the courts. The secretary of states were brought in to do what? Overthrow the elections. Who doesn't know that? How is this not a conspiracy? So what they don't understand is that if Trump were to do one little tiny more thing, and I've told you the one thing to do, fire all federal circuit court prosecutors. You can't defund them because their money comes through the judiciary system to those stupid courts because the Congress has the right to create them and to destroy them. And they were only created basically so that you want to get really down and dirty with this. Here's why they were created. Because states in the beginning started to have banking issues across state lines. And so they set up federal courts and circuit courts and appellate courts outside of D.C. to settle economic squabbling between the states, and the judges always got paid. That's the way it's always worked. Judges are immune. You understand that? There are a few judges that have ever been impeached, even though they are anti-constitutional. And what I'm going to tell you, Mr. President, is that the Insurrection Act of 1807 is the perfect thing for you to use right now because you are under a conspiracy. 16 judges filing rulings that are obviously anti-constitutional against the executive branch demonstrates a conspiracy. Now, when you bring your U.S. Marshals in to close all those courts after you've fired the prosecutors in those courts, because you have the right to do so, that's your executive branch prerogative, then you're going to open, and that's why I said your first job should have been getting a good attorney general. You didn't get one. Another very important job would have been putting somebody with some testicles in at the FBI. You put in two people without a testicle between them. And I know how to take over things politically. Because people don't have very good thinking, so it's always easy to take over groups. The larger the group, the easier it is to take it over, as long as you can control the propaganda. In the old days, propaganda used to take down a political person headed to the White House, does one wrong thing. Remember John Dean when he raised his fist and said, "We're going to take D.C.? That's it, gone. Why? Because the mainstream media wanted to play it that way. So that's who's always determined this, because they always knew ahead of time how to play it, because it was always determined since 1979 by Optech, the software that controls all electronic voting machines. So when Trump gets that out, and notice he said he's not going to give any help. Have you heard of anything happening in L.A.? No, because Gavin Newsom will not agree to Trump's demands that there'll be no federal government help until you change the laws in California stating that you will have voter ID and paper ballots. At that point, it will no longer be a Democrat state and the thing that controls America. So, and that's the reason why all the most corrupt senators and Republicans in the House all come from California. Think of them. They're the most, gosh, don't think of them. We're under a color revolution. Color revolution was by George Soros. He started going after, a long time ago, the attorney generals and the secretary of state. And George Soros, through his good friend, who basically handles the digital side of this, well, there's two friends, actually. There's Dmitry Alperovitch, who handles the Atlantic Council, which creates all of the false flags and all of the false five-eyed information for NATO, for the treaty that is about ready to pull us into a war in Ukraine. So that's one of them. But the other one is, of course, Eric Schmidt, who basically has set up with George Soros, and this is all through the Pilgrim Society, through the Global Engagement Center. Now there's global engagement centers in all kinds of countries now because of the propaganda. Notice how everyone screamed across the world, "How dare you turn off the Voice of America?" Okay, the Voice of America traditionally, when it was created, was the voice no one wanted to hear because it was the voice of truth. Now it's the voice of lies. But the lies are what create the propaganda in the countries where the CIA is doing their undercover war work, which is all black ops. It's not on any budget. So imagine, sorry, Doge, you will never, ever be able, under any circumstance, to stop the black ops of CIA. But now that Trump has released JFK and shows that the CIA has, as we've always told you, many corporations, we say 2,000 it was working through at the time, and they're all crooked, they're all frauds, and they're all a gravy train for people in Washington, D.C. The CIA has to be closed down, period. and all agents called back because they create war. Those are the war fomenters. Except when we started to get White House CIA operative Barry Soetoro, who was not black, he was not from Africa. His wife wasn't female. He didn't have 2 children, and he was the biggest CIA psyop in the world. And most of the world knows that and laugh at us because we allow, 2 different Joe Bidens to play Joe Biden with the mask afterwards, and one of them turned to total dementia, and we still couldn't get him out of office. In other words, it doesn't matter who's there. The system is a bureaucratic system of bureaucracy that is just like the British, because the British set it up. That's why the federal court system is a court with absolute immunity. The British court system was all underneath the king. And if anything ever was determined that the king didn't like it, went to the king's court, and the king's prosecutors always made sure that whether it was a grand jury indictment or a star chamber or whatever, that the king got the king's way. That's the way it works. Now, here in America, we're not supposed to, but we allowed Biden to become a king, who wasn't even Biden, and make decisions that were so unconstitutional that right now, folks, we have a revolution, an insurrection. We need the Insurrection Act of 1807 to come in because it covers conspiracies, unlawfulness, disregard for law, and all the things that are happening right now as that might as well be the Democrat plank of every single Democrat candidate. And we're not in a democracy. I just like to add that. So, is there a conspiracy going on? 16 judges rule unconstitutionally against the executive branch? That's a conspiracy. Do we have unlawfulness? We have sanctuary cities, don't we? We have sanctuary states, don't we? Don't we have all kinds of law enforcement agencies releasing people who are felons and murderers onto our street because we can't hold them because they're not citizens, but we give them more rights than citizens? This is just what happened with corporations when we gave them complete immunity. Corporations never have to suffer for the deaths they create because in a court they're at a higher standing than a human being, a citizen. They are basically immune, and at the most they can do is, some kind of punitive action against the CEO of a company, and then close the company down. But all the people they killed, no, they have no right to any recourse, and that's why pharmaceutical, no right to recourse. That's why wars, no right to recourse. You don't get to vote in any wars. Is there any war going on? During Obama's time, he bombed the 7 countries that didn't have central banks. Shall I name them for you? This is what history is about, folks. Oil, central banks, wars. Okay, who? Who do you think? Obama created 38 million refugees, which caused the Pope to become rich for a while, caused Turkey to become rich for a while, caused the United Nations to become rich for a while, because we paid for the refugees that Obama created. And in most cases, he killed practically as many civilians as he killed targets, and he never stopped the targets. The targets grew bigger every day of his 8 years of administration, and he dropped more bombs than all presidents before in terms of his 8 years, and he's at war against terror. So I say, you have to bring back the global war on terror, which was never really voted on by Congress, so you don't need their approval. It was called, let me get the initials right. It's called the Authorization for War. What did I call it? Anyway, it's a AUWF or something, AUMF for military force. Authorization for something military force. Anyway, that's what they use is called police force. Well, we already have a national emergency. That's beyond that. Trump already, what's it called? En passant. He took their queen with an en passant, okay? If you play chess. That's what happened. And they don't even know it. They're still moaning and groaning. And they're looking at the chessboard going, you can't do that. And he's going, it's already done. It's your move. And the time clock is clicking. And so he has basically conspiracies on all levels. But because he controls the Senate and the House of Republic, the House. He has, and he controls the White House. He has to make it look as if the two-party system still can go on. It can't go on. There's only one party, and that is the party of the Constitutional Republic of America. And put the word constitutional in front. Go back to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the rule of law, and all of this stops overnight. No one can question a few things about the executive branch. All 2 million people who work for him. He can fire them at his own discretion. Except it's really hard to fire senior executive service members who are like a British aristocracy, the landed gentry, and it's really almost impossible to fire them. Okay, so what does he have to do? Defund them and place them in very low positions where they can't have the fraud and the gravy train that we now see, which is far beyond anybody knows. I've already pointed out there's $42 trillion sitting there that DOJ should be able to recover. $42 trillion. In other words, the debt to the U.S. Fed is nothing compared to what he could recover just simply stopping the vampirization of American taxpayers and the offshore accounts. And if he just simply declared war on offshore accounts as economic terrorists, he could capture all their wealth and or end their wealth as they can't move it back to the countries they ripped it off from. That's why they're in offshore accounts. And that's most of the wealth of America. 65% of the wealth of America leaves to offshore accounts every year. People, let's see, who yells about this besides the Panama Papers and a few others? Besides us, no, almost nobody. Anyway, so the war on global terror has to basically just, you need to make a big public event of going back to get all the equipment from Afghanistan and saying terror ain't over. We're bombing Yemen. We're going to bomb Iran. We were supporting the bombing of Hamas, who is really the Zionists. We support the bombing of Hezbollah. We support the bombing of ISIL, of ISIS, and the other 5 groups in Syria that are all trying to take the oil that never got through the whole time, except to Russians and to the Turks, to Erdogan, who now wants to take over Ukraine's reconstruction. What a joke. Anyway, it's what's really happened. I'll tell you what's happened. Everything that he needs is wrapped up right here in the Insurrection Act and the Alien Enemies Act and the fact that he's declared 7 national emergencies, one on energy, one on the north border, one on the south border, one on fentanyl, one on China, one on a couple other really strange ones. But anyway, we're under severe national emergencies. And because of that, he can depose posse comitatus. He already has. He sent the military to the southern border just to prove it to you. Do you notice these are steps on the way to declaring against him what they declared against him, which was the Insurrection Act, which was I don't even have a name for it. It was the theater of the absurd that we got to see for the first time, that Congress had the total support of the DOJ and the FBI to go after the insurrectionists. Okay, they can't call insurrection. Only the executive. Did Trump call the Insurrection Act? No. Did Biden? No. Did Trump call out the National Guard? Yes. Did they use it? No. And now it's been proven it was the DOJ, the FBI, and the corrupt Congress, as well as the entire judiciary system is completely compromised in the federal government, and down to the state levels. They'll soon find, as I said earlier, that George Soros has been supporting personally through secret foundations money to get the corrupt court appointments in the states. They have one option here. Okay? Let me tell you the option. Trump can ignore all of these people. But if he did, he'd pass up this greatest opportunity ever in human American history. He needs to go after them. This is a war of insurrection of the Judiciary Department against the executive. Now, if anybody else wants to get involved, good. We'll send our new 50,000 FBI agents from the states, not from the federal government, after all of you. And we will set up grand juries, and we'll make each case last 4 years. and we're going to prosecute you to high hilt, but the whole time you won't be able to do anything. And then when he proves that the insurrection called Russia, Russia, Russia was an insurrection in all departments of the federal government, which you will be able to do by gathering up this information because of the Insurrection Act and the conspiracy here. This is the second term of conspiracy. Okay? If you can't gather up this evidence, we do it here from our lazy boys. If you can't gather it from D.C. with all that you have at your wealth at your hands, I don't know. I have doubts. Anyway, it's all considered right there now. Let's talk about something. What happens in a court? What happens in a court is a judge thinks they're God. You know how many judges I've been before because of my business? I was doing a lot of litigation for children in courts, in you name it, all kinds of courts. And these judges in almost every case believe that they're God. They're not, simply because we don't go to the trouble to impeach them. We need to start impeaching them like the process found in the House to go after Boasberg, James Boasberg, the FISA court judge who allowed the insurrection against Trump to happen with total surveillance that went through all agencies, but Trump himself on the presidential executive seat did not receive this information that Boasberg allowed to go through. As well, he's corrupt as he can possibly be. And now he wants to bring back Venezuelan gang members to kill more people. This is insanity. This is anti-constitutional. So we're going to have to go back to McCarthyism. But instead of communism, have you now or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? No, it's going to be have you now or ever been a member of the anti-constitutional actions? And then you show them the actions, and they either restate their vow to the Constitution under penalty of horrible stuff, treason included, depending on what office you're in. That's what we have to go instead of judges having their precarious, precocious, proper, polite mannerisms in the court. Sorry, I'm doing too many P's. Too many.
What is the time on that so I can take all that crap out? What time?
23:07.
Okay, thank you.
So in courts, we have many rulings that are proper and Britishly quiet and polite, except that you have a little hammer that you strike some wood with. And they usually fly the wrong flag because they're not Americans and they don't believe in American sovereignty. They are British, and they take their vow to the British Bar Association, the Temple Bar, which then takes its vow to the King's Court. Okay, any of this sound familiar? And what do? Well, they are the masterful conductors of fraud, of grifting, of sexual perversion, of sanctuary cities, of releasing illegal aliens into the country to commit crime after crime after crime, of open borders. If you say open borders, that is treason to America, according to if I was the executive. I'd say, what did you say? You want open borders? I'm going to take away your citizenship. How dare you say such a thing? How many crimes and deaths have to be committed by the people coming across these borders before sane people, rational people say that if you say you're for open borders, that is anti-constitutional. The Constitution and the setting up of government was determined that the executive branch has the right to secure our borders against all aliens, internal and external. Well, we have two wars going on. The whole world is sending their worst to our southern and northern border with fentanyl that they put in their pockets. Say, would you please carry this across? You get a lot of money per pill. Each one of those pills can kill an American. Wait, is that not a conspiracy? Is that not an insurrection? Is that not an invasion? Is that not a war? There was a war against marijuana, for heaven's sakes, for years, and people got put in jail for life. How about a war against fentanyl? There is one, a national emergency. So there doesn't have to be a declared war by Congress. But, oh, wait a second. Wait, hang on. According to Trump, $350 billion was given to Zelensky, who is at war. Are we not at war? Well, we're certainly at economic war. We're part of the 18 sanctions on Russia and all these different sanctions on anybody who supports this war in Russia. In Ukraine's not a war. That was our grifting pot, our honey pot. That was our money laundering. That was a big. Imagine Zelensky runs a laundry. That's the feeling you get when you talk about this war. And Putin, well, he's a murdering dictator. What's surprising about that? He's still mad at America for taking all of those states from him, which he wants back. Is anyone surprised by that? So he isn't a big country. Economic sanctions work very well. Biden put 27% of our oil money into Putin's pocket during this war. First thing he did, first act, Biden. Used up all of our reserves, filled them up with Russian oil, and for 4 years, 27% of our oil came from Russia, while we supposedly were at war with, helping Ukraine be at war with them. So it's all just a big fake thing. But what they did with setting up like the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, and sticking things there that internal war actors can be acted upon. These are internal war actors. They're going against the Constitution. What else do we have? The laws that are made are as stupid as the pandemic laws that say that we give our entire sovereignty to the CDC, NIH, and the WHO. It's like, who passed that law? What kind of demon passed the law to give away American sovereignty? Well, this is what's happening again now. When you have a sanctuary city, that's unconstitutional. Everything should be weighed. And Texas, I think it is, and Utah and a few other states are weighing all laws that affect them that come from the Fed. And if those federal laws don't align with their laws, and if they break the 10th Amendment, that every law that goes against the Constitution is repugnant, as well as the state's rights, like education. He just canceled the education department. Why? There never was one. That wasn't right. That's why you could say the Mormons moved to Utah so they could have their own education system.
Well, then get rid of the IRS. Get rid of the Federal Reserve. I mean, let's clean house. Let's get rid of all these agencies that are unconstitutional. They were put in place by the British, and the British came over here and they crawled themselves up into our government and have been running it. And the big move, of course, there was the 1913 move that brought in these agencies that we see today. But then Jimmy Carter got in office and slam dunked everything else. He put in the SES, the Department of Education, and I hear people out there talking about how wonderful Jimmy Carter is. Make no mistake about it. I lived through Jimmy Carter. He was an absolute nightmare, and everything he did needs to be rolled back.
Yeah, he brought in the total Britishization of America, and Lord Malloch Brown basically became our governor, and he's the governor of America for a long time, still is. Matter of fact,
explain that. You have to explain that.
He's Dominion, and he's Smartmatic LLC, and so, but there's two Dominions, and there's many Smartmatics. And there's many Seidels, and there's many different groups that he's underneath.
And if you sue the wrong one.
You sue the wrong one, he sues you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you lose. Then you have no money to sue him.
Sidney Powell?
That's what happened to Sidney Powell. That's what happened to the people who said Dominion was controlled by China. No, it wasn't. That was a different Dominion. When they said his Smartmatic, no. His Smartmatic LLC did that, not his other Smartmatic Incorporated. So he came on and said Smartmatic did not do that. Smartmatic LLC, which I'm the head of. This is what we get from the British. That's right now. They're still trying to start a war, World War III, in Ukraine. Over what? Over a few resources. Why? Because they don't have many resources. Their resources come from fleecing their 54 Commonwealth countries, which I say Commonwealth came from. Their job was to take the wealth from the commoners. And that's what they did. And we are one of them. We are the, 57th or 55th, whatever it is. That's what we are, folks. We are nothing more than British-controlled, and that's why, the Carney, immediately, head of Canada, went over, and what did he do? Kiss the King's feet. Ask any Canadian, is Canada connected to Britain? And they'll tell you no. It's stupid. Same thing for Australia, New Zealand. They'll tell you no. All these countries, how about all the offshore accounts in the dominions that are British? Let's just seize all that. Let's consider Britain an enemy for a minute. What would happen? Well, then there's more wealth in offshore accounts and all the money in currency in the world. That's exactly what Henry Kissinger determined would happen if he manipulated oil price. And when the lie came out that there was limited oil, then the price went up even more, didn't it? And then when they found out, America has more oil than all of them, the price went down, didn't it? Then when we started paying Russia money, when Russia was coming to Syria to get oil from the only pipeline that they protected there, that's why they were there, protecting that oil line, and that made Erdogan mad, and that's the reason 1.5 million refugees came up missing, which the Catholic Church had already put on their computer and got paid for. They didn't care what happened to them afterwards. And that's why then George Soros picked them up, and anyone from Africa, bring them to Europe, attack Europe, and then he turned around and said, I can get rid of them, but it's going to cost you X billions a year, or I forget how many billions, 26 billion a year, and he would get the ships and he'd get them out of Europe for them. So he brought them over and he'd take them out. That's what we're looking at. This is how evil it is. So when we're talking about ruling, here's the only ruling that needs to be made. The rule of law. These people are so wrong. It is unbelievable. How could they, I've yelled about this a lot already today, but how could anybody say they want an open border? How could anybody say they want a sanctuary city? Have they had any of their loved ones killed? How many of them would say that lawlessness was good and that you should follow the example of every politician you know and grab what you can and cheat and get that money out of America and sell America out and then, go to Ecuador or go to Ireland or go wherever you want to go? No, we have to get back to some real basics here. No dual citizenship. Isolationism. Forget about tariffs. We need to build it ourselves. We have every resource we need. It was found out in Trump's first administration. We have more oil than anybody else. We had a surplus. And that was with everyone standing against him. He's under an attack. This is another insurrection. But beyond that is an internal war actors in the Justice Department all the way to the Supreme Court. All need to be investigated because they all got too much money. Same thing for everyone in the Congress. They all need to have their finances investigated. They're supposed to reveal this. It's their job. They swear they have. They haven't. You can't name anyone we haven't investigated that we didn't find the trail of where their money went. And now we can see it. USAID just brought it to light. That's nothing. There's many of those agencies beyond your imagination. And the worst of all is the Fed, of course. And so now we see that, already Trump's only been in office for a minute and all the lies of the Fed are reversing, aren't they? Inflation's slowing. Jobs are up. All those lies. All of that. Because why? Now they're going to get behind him. They think they can manipulate him. Well, maybe they have. Maybe they haven't. But all I know is that if it was a Hillary Clinton or if it was a Mike Obama, I can't imagine where we would be now. So Trump, God bless you. Get all the laws in place, but bring from the states true patriots. They can take over all those houses of the people leaving that you fired. And they come there. We need a lot of lawyers. We need a lot of FBI. You need to clear those agencies out as you're doing, but totally clear them out no matter what you have to do. And now you have the sanction to do that with your CR. So I say, so far, it looks at this moment that the darkest night is before the dawn. But if you do the right thing, you will have the dawn.
I just don't like it when we are being disrespectful, or it seems that we are being disrespectful in the words we use in describing the executive office, because President Trump is holding that office for us. It's as big in terms of the Constitution as the other two branches. You have Congress, a branch in and of itself, the judicial, and remember, all these rogue judges are not part of the judicial. They're part of the congressional. and Douglas can explain that. And then you have the office of the president. So when I hear terms like, and no disrespect to you, Douglas, but when I hear terms like the president should do this or why hasn't he done this and all that, I feel like we should elevate this more in our speech, because it's a challenging job holding this office when you have so many attacks on you constantly. And he is staying within the law to get this done. So it may be slower than what we want, but what I'm watching are these other people that you rightly called out. I'm taking this Pam Bondi and Kash Patel stuff. Boy, you talk about two pussies. Have they arrested any of the top dogs? No. Now, they have to look like they're doing something. So they're going out. What did Kash Patel do? Something that was like overseas the other day? And I'm going, what's the FBI doing there? Oh, Kash Patel, it's so transparent to me that he is there to protect British interest. And Pam, I have no idea why she was put on center stage unless, like Marco Rubio, there needs to be some light shown on them. Marco Rubio was born of two Cuban nationals in Miami. Just because he was born in Miami does not mean he is a citizen. We do not have birthright citizenship in this country and on the Constitution. And of course, we can't take that to the Supreme Court right now, because you've got that other bimbo, Amy Coney Barrett, who can't decide what side of the fence she's on. Is she a constitutionalist or is she an insurrectionist with the other women that are on that, including John Roberts? So we really can't take that issue to the Supreme Court right now. But these are three equal branches, and I would just like us to be reminded that President Trump is holding the branch called the executive office, and we need to give him more respect for the job.
Well, yes, and he's the only person who can do it at this point. And if he can't do it, well, then it's lost. But I assume that he knew this when he took the job to begin with in the first administration, that it was ensconced in its own bureaucratic quagmire. It is so pathetic that when I had seen these things before in different capacities working for that monster, that I just wanted to get away from it. And so my deal was I just wanted to get away from it. I didn't want anything to do with it. Now that we talk about these things all the time, it sounds like I'm just being a very highfalutin Karen. But the reality is, I'm not even speaking to him. I'm speaking to the impulses of revolution that are happening here, because it was nothing short of a revolution. This isn't the purple revolution of Soros, which is using the ensconced bureaucracy. This is the revolution going back to the original revolution that makes sure that this time the British aren't involved, because that's who always gets us in trouble in every single case. That's who milks us more than anyone. They set up the template for the rest of the world acting like they're our enemies, but taking our money. Okay? That's what they do. That's all they do. It's just like Canada. We don't even know what the debt to Canada every year is, and now we have Carney coming over and playing this. So I have no respect whatsoever. Let me think. Is there any single political office in the world that I respect right now? No, I don't. And that's because there's no such thing as any of the things that they claim to be are actually happening. For instance, let's take Britain. Do I have any respect for Britain? No. Why? Because all of them will tell you the king does not control Britain and the United Kingdom. That's a lie. Done with that. Okay, so you come to America and you say, well, okay, the corruption in the Congress, the corruption in the federal judicial system, and the corruption in the White House, oh no hope whatsoever. So when Trump came, I had my doubts. I didn't want Hillary there, but now he's the only hope there is. And so whether or not he's being used by the time spirit Michael to forge this revolution, because it will have to continue. It's okay. What did the king say? Here's what the king said. Don't worry, the White House changes every 4 years. Now, what he didn't say was, and we usually choose who that is going to be. That will be our crown agent in the White House. And we have our methods to make sure that we have them under control. So that's what they believe. So if he doesn't get it in place, that he has someone to step in his shoes afterwards, then I don't know that these changes will last, because as we are showing here, you can use previous decisions, laws, determinations, and basically get what you want. And that's what law is all about. Law is like mathematics. You use it to get your point. That's it. It isn't really valid. Because when it comes down to it, no judge has the right to be appointed for life. No judge should not be remanded for his decisions if they are anti-constitutional. And certainly John Roberts should not be the Supreme Court justice and argue with Trump publicly because Trump said that he was being attacked by these lower court justices unduly. He should have said nothing. But now that it comes before him, the court has already been tainted. He cannot do his legal obligation. And so this is a battle that is beyond my understanding. Of course, I couldn't do any better because the pressures here are that every single person that you think is your friend has some agenda. And if you don't understand that before you start talking to them, then you don't know what they're talking about because you don't know how to read between the lines. And it's a very, very difficult thing. I see this in many other countries. What happens? Dictators. And they control the election. They control the propaganda. They control the people. And the people come out on the street by the millions in opposition. What happens? Nothing. Look at what happened with Macron. How many times has the crowd said, get rid of him before we have a revolution? What has happened? Nothing. So I don't have faith in those things. But what I do have faith in is consciousness. So if the consciousness that is leading Trump could add, please, the Insurrection Act and get enough lawyers that you could put this into grand juries and hold it up for years as what? As a punishment, as a visual punishment for those who wish to do the same. In other words, there's a new sheriff in town, we're following the law. Sorry, we're following the law. And it's a very tough job to have, I know, as a principal. It's very tough to be that person. But if you don't, I can promise you that the chaos that happens afterwards is 1,000 times worse.